Hello everyone, I'm the Smart Titan, and today we will be in a more educational video talking about history and obviously some Attack on Titan as usual. This video will be totally spoiler free, it will have nothing about the manga, so if you're an anime only you can just relax and watch this video. We can tell by the weaponry used in Attack on Titan and also the uniform worn by soldier that it's based on World War I. We get to know this because in most of the story we see people fighting using tactics from the trench warfare. And what is the trench warfare? It was a strategy using direct combats between opposing forces, and it consists in just comprising military trenches where troops could be protected from the enemy fire, and they also could protect themselves from artillery fire. One fact about World War I is that the number of dead soldiers that were caused by machine guns of rapid fire and the constant bombardments caused by the artillery killed around 4 million people just by the end of 1914. We can see in this moment of the final season of Attack on Titan that Gabi hits Udo with a steel hand grenade. And the steel hand grenade is the German most used grenade during World War I and World War II. In the following picture we can see a German soldier throwing a steel hand grenade in Russia in 1941. I'm pretty sure that most of you already know it because of all those old Wolfenstein games, Call of Duty games, and obviously the Battlefield games. In the moment when Seki jumps from the Zeppelin, when Marley is fighting the Middle East Allied forces, we see him carrying a light rifle that seems similar to the M1 carbine used by the US soldiers during World War II. And also the knife that we see is similar to an Austrian assault dagger called Sturmmesser M1917, a trench fighting knife used in World War I. We saw how that Zeppelin used by the Survey Corps when they made the first move on Marley was very strong and hard to deal with, and it's based on the Zeppelin that was created in Germany by the inventor Ferdinand von Zeppelin, and those airships were used during World War I because they were able to reach very high altitude that planes couldn't reach, and they were also very quiet and hard to detect. That made them very efficient because in World War I the radar wasn't invented yet, so it made them very hard to spot and safe to use. And as we see in the pictures, there were very crazy attempts by mankind to generate a way to find flying objects during World War I. So now we know that literally most of the technology that we see is technology that came from World War I. And also if we see the Middle East Allied forces of Attack on Titan, they look very alike to the soldiers of the Ottoman Empire of World War I. Another detail is that the Eldian prisoners of Marley wore similar uniforms to the one of the Jewish prisoners of Germany in World War II. Now seeing the weapons once again, we can see many Vickers machine guns from World War I II on Attack on Titan. The Vickers machine guns were one of the most deadly weapons of World War I. They could fire over 600 rounds per minute and they had a range of 4k yards. If they were properly handled in a rate of fire for hours. And the funny detail is that it needed cooling water, and when there was no water the soldiers had to pee in the gun to make it stay fresh. And mainly the soldiers of Eldie and Marley, they carry infantry rifles from World War I that are variations of the bolt action rifles. As an example, I found an amazing job made by a user of DeviantArt called Andrea Silva 60, where we see all of these variations that were very popular among different nations during that war. But I think the most common bolt rifle that we see in Attack on Titan is the Carcano. If you check the images, we can see that it's almost identical to the one that we see in the anime. The Carcano was a repeating military rifle introduced in 1891 in Italy that was used a lot by Italian troops in World War I and some German forces at World War II. And another fun fact is that Italy made around 60k Carcanos for the Japanese army, and they were used by the Japanese Imperial Naval Forces in the invasion of China. The weapon used by Flush in the scene when he used to be a very cool anime Joker, it's the Mauser C96, and it corresponds to a pistol used by the German army during World War II. Also you can compare it, and it's similar to a Luger pistol also used by the German army. One of the most deadly weapons of that era was the poison gas. We can see on this scene of Attack on Titan also that a poison gas was thrown to the people in the village. It is literally the same kind of weapon, just that it mixed with the reality of Attack on Titan. It was used to turn people into pure titans. And talking about pure titans, the attack used by Zeke converting Eldian villagers into pure titans used for suicidal attacks remind me of the kamikazes of World War II that were Japanese pilots making suicide attacks against the Allied naval vessels in the Pacific campaign of the World War, with the difference that the kamikazes were recruited soldiers, while most of the alien soldiers were forced to fight by Marley. Another detail that makes the story feel closer to World War I is that most of the soldiers were carrying repeating rifles instead of machine guns. That is something more closer to that era of the 1910s. The anti-Titan weapon used by the Middle East Allied forces during the first battle of the final season looked similar to the anti-tank gun KPUB of the Czech Republic. Shit. Please forgive my bad English, people from Czech Republic. But I think that the most accurate comparison is with the howitzer M1938 of the Russian army that was developed around 1938. And about the armored train that appeared in episode 1 of the final season, it looks very similar to the Lilliput Panzer's Pastog or whatever used in World War II. I need to practice my German. And finally, about the battleships, we see that most of the battleships used are inspired by World War I and World War II. Here's an example of a German SMS Weissenberg that looks very close to the image of ships of the Middle East Allied forces. But I think it's closer to a pre-Death battleships, that they were battleships made between late 1880s. And a fun fact is that on 1902 there was a battleship of the Japanese army called the IJN Mikasa. And it looks close to the ones that Isayama drew for the story, so maybe he was curious of the name and he wanted to make like some sort of reference to this battleship called like one of his main characters. I'd like to mention also a post made on Reddit by Kamika Terror on the subreddit of World of Warship, where he or she was able to spot some models of the warships that appeared in the trailer of the final season of Attack on Titan. We also see flare guns similar to the ones created in the 19th century. Although I don't remember if they appear in the final season, but it's a nice detail to add to this video. And the final weapon that I want to talk about is the nuclear bomb. And the nuke was one of the most lethal weapons used by humans in the whole history. And it was used against Japan to make them surrender from World War II. And this power is held by the colossal titan of Armin, that we can see the very deadly and devastating power that it has when he converts himself into the colossal titan. So we see that Isayama took inspiration from many weapons of those two historic periods of mankind. But I think the most heavy influence came from World War I because of the tactics used by the armies and the most used weapon. But it's very cool to see how Isayama linked both stories into a very cool anime. Credits to Daniel from Titanfall for this amazing edit, and funny also. So I hope you enjoyed this video. This was inspired by my old post on Reddit, so if anyone wants to read it, I will leave the link below. And once again, thank you and see you soon.